65 toss power trap. That might pop wide open, Reds.
Kansas City Chiefs absolutely phenomenal. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the TPT podcast. Today, we have two big-time guests. We have our first guest, Zach Story. Zach, how you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great. Excited to do my first podcast, talk some Chiefs football. I'm super pumped.
Yeah, welcome on, Zach. Zach, you're going to be joining us pretty regular here. Kind of tell everybody, how you became a Chiefs fan and, your fandom of the Chiefs real quick.
Yeah, so I grew up, I still live actually just in Midtown KC, so right in the heart of the city. And so my parents, Chiefs fans, everyone around me, Chiefs fans. And I didn't really care until I was about like 8 years old. But then Janikowski hit a game-winning field goal against us in overtime, and I started crying just off of that, even though I had no knowledge of what was happening. And since then, I haven't missed a game. So
there you go.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it was like 2011.
Yeah.
2011, he did that. Yeah, that was a heartbreaker. But yeah, I mean, love it, Chiefs fan. We're happy to have you here at the TPT podcast. We're also here with a return guest, one of the most diehard Vikings fans. You guys know him from TikTok. He's big in the TikTok world, being the number one Vikings fan out there. Dustin, klug. Dustin, how's it going, man?
Oh, it's going good. I'm glad to be back on the best podcast in the world, the TPT podcast. And yeah, like I said, we're excited to be here.
Yeah, I mean, it's the best podcast in the world because we have the two best guests in the world. We got a lot for you guys today on the TPT podcast. We're not going to only be going over Chiefs talk. We're going to be going all NFL. What's going to happen at the deadline? We're going to give you guys some teams need to make trades. Also, what's going to happen with the Vikings and what happened with Kirk Cousins. So first, let's get into what happened during this Kansas City Chiefs game. As most of you know, how I can be during Chiefs games is I don't like to lose, especially I don't like to lose to divisional opponents. And losing to the Broncos was just, it kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, and just kind of really figuring out what's going on with the wide receiver position. That's really what most of this podcast is going to be about. And Zach, I kind of wanted to get your first thoughts here on the show is what kind of went wrong? What's kind of going wrong on the offensive side of the ball so far in KC?
It's the receivers. Yesterday, it seemed like it was also the tackles. I felt like Mahomes was getting pressured from behind a lot more often than usual.
Right.
Sky Moore, I don't think he has it. And so if we're trying to make a Super Bowl run like we did last year, we can't have him being our third most snaps receiver. It just can't happen because he doesn't have it as a pro. And sorry.
No. And I agree with that. It's like you said, the third most snaps. And, that's what I was going to really ask you, after you're saying the third most snaps, who's a guy you really feel like should get elevated more snaps if it's not Sky Moore?
Yeah, well, Rice has been over the last 5 weeks, his snaps keep going up and up. And finally last week he got over 60%, I think, for the snap count. And so just continuing to work him in, he still isn't that number one man beater guy that most teams need. He's more like a Kelsey receiver type, good at finding the zones and then good getting the yards after the catch. But I don't think we have that guy in our core. And if we don't make a trade for a guy like that, it doesn't mean we can't win it all, because we do have Mahomes. Our defense is improved, but we won't win in that conventional way where you have a number one guy that you can just go to other than Kelsey. It won't, not with this core.
And I 100% agree with you. I would like to see a guy like Rashee Rice where he's the number one receiver right now in Kansas City. And, we're going to obviously get more into what can transpire tomorrow in the trade deadline. But going back to Sky Moore, and I don't want to turn this episode into a rant because I can go on a rant. You said it, though. Sky Moore is just not the guy. We know what Sky Moore is after 2 seasons. And I'm really sick of Chiefs fans, and I got to call out these other Chiefs fans that are saying, oh, it's his second year. Oh, well, he's only had 1 year under Mahomes. No, we know what he is. We know
Yeah.
what Sky Moore is at this point. And I do agree that Sky Moore cannot be your guy where you keep thinking, let's force feed him the ball, where he's going to be our number one receiver. It's not working out right now for Sky Moore. And again, I would like to see a guy like Rice get more snaps. Just find a way to get Rice the ball in his hands because he's obviously making plays.
Yeah, Rice is like the anti-Demarcus Robinson. As soon as he catches it, looks upfield and sprints as fast as he can.
Absolutely. Demarcus Robinson was a guy where he loved going backwards. He was the type of guy, he's the ball, he's taking 2 to 3 steps backwards. And I like Rice. I like his burst. And I think he should really just be a guy where he may have to be out there 80% of the snaps, 90% of the snaps, because other guys are just not getting open. I know a lot of people want to critique his drops. He's a rookie. He's going to have drops. He's not going to be, like you said, a clear cut, just number one receiver, kind of like a guy like Addison's he's not even a clear cut. He's number 2 guy. And that brings me more to Dustin. Dustin, who's another guy? And again, you watch a lot of Chiefs games. What do you think's not going right for this kind of Chiefs receiving core? Who's another guy you think that should be stepping it up for the Chiefs receivers?
I don't think it's just one guy. I think everybody just kind of has to take a step forward, whether that's Sky Moore, whether that's MVS,
Right.
I don't think the Chiefs really have that veteran guy that's been in that room for a long time.
Right.
You got Miko Hardman back, and he's been out of the system for a little over a year, but still, I think everybody just kind of has to step up. Whether that's going to happen within the next week or two, or if you guys need to trade for a wide receiver, you guys just need help in that aspect. And I think it kind of shows, especially during the Broncos game, just kind of all season. You can see it here and there, just sprinkled in throughout the games, that Mahomes, as good as he is, he still needs someone else besides Travis Kelce to catch the ball, because that's how an offense works.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. And the guy you just kind of mentioned is MVS. I don't really know what happened to MVS, where, again, this coming into the season, I thought he was going to be a lot better. A guy none of us has really mentioned is Kadarius Toney. I don't know what happened, where coming into the season, it was kind of like Kadarius Toney can kind of be that number one receiver. He can kind of, be the guy that's kind of a gadget guy, but he can kind of be a down the field stretcher. Going back really to the Broncos game, Zach, what do you think you can give me the 3 takeaways you saw during this game versus the Broncos?
Yeah, the first takeaway that I saw in defense was, we had that stretch where we didn't have Bolton earlier in the season, and it didn't look our defense suffered too much, but teams were passing against us because we were like, it was the Bears game, the Vikings game. I don't think he was in for that. Denver was able to just control the clock. They had the ball for what seemed like 75% of the game,
right,
just pounding it. Because Trent was a great replacement and probably one of the best backup middle linebackers in the league, but he's much better in pass coverage.
Right.
And we don't have that run stopper right now. We just have a bunch of really fast athletic guys that can easily get blocked in that second level. So I'd say the run defense definitely needs improvement, and without Bolton, it's going to be tough. But as well as, of course, the receivers, of course, just like Dustin mentioned, it's not just Sky that needs to step up. Toney doesn't do anything. MVS he's good for one big play, or one big game, like last week, or like the AFC Championship game, or the NFC Championship game when he was with Rodgers. But he's just so inconsistent. I feel like our group is just a bunch of inconsistent guys that show little flashes in the pan, And third, I'd say our interior O-line was not as stout yesterday as it normally is, especially against like a Broncos front that isn't super talented.
Right.
And so those are my 3 biggest takeaways.
Yeah, and I, to just touch on yours real quick before I get Dustin's, it's one thing you said is, obviously we all know, and I think it's kind of right in front of our faces, the Chiefs receiving core is a huge problem. And it's hard to critique a guy, and I think it's starting to become a problem every now and then, is Andy Reid running the ball. No one was getting open this game versus the Broncos. No one was getting open, and we still thought, you know what, no one's getting open. The offensive line at times, even when it's getting open, they're not going to be able to hold guys 5-6 seconds. It's just not going to happen. So you have guys that aren't going to be able to block, and then you combine that with people who are not getting open. That's when you have to be able to run the ball. The Broncos are historically bad giving up yards this season, and you're only giving Pacheco 8 yards. He had 40 yards on 8 carries, excuse me. I think he's a guy they're going to have to get more carries to. And I saw Matt Verderam say this for Arrowhead Addict, and I really agree with it. I think Andy Reid thinks running the ball is boring. It sounds crazy. It sounds like, okay, Jaden, really, like there's no way a Hall of Fame coach thinks that this guy thinks running the ball is boring. I really think he has such a great football mind that handing the ball off to a guy is just boring. I really do. And I think, he had that problem in Philly. And again, there's only so much you can critique Andy Reid because he's got Patrick Mahomes, he's got all these weapons that he's able to have success with. And I'm not saying he's a problem. I'm just saying my concern is us running the ball because, like you said, our interior offensive line is one of the best in the league. They didn't have a great game last game. No one really did. But I think they are an offensive line where you can have power football with a guy like Pacheco. So I would like to see them run the ball more. And another thing you said is missing a guy like Nick Bolton. I like Drew Tranquil, but Drew's more like a safety. He really is. He's more like a safety. He's not a guy that's just going to be a pure run stopper. Willie Gay is good, but again, Willie Gay at times tries to gamble a little too much. So I agree with most of those parts. I just think it is trying to find consistency with our receivers. And everyone was really on Sunday just doing a better job of just, again, when things aren't going right, when Kelsey's double, saying, I got to be the guy that steps up, because all three of your points are right on key. And that's why I'm curious, Dustin, what are your 3 takeaways from, watching that Chiefs game versus the Broncos?
I think just to kind of piggyback off of what Zach said, it's a very bad run D. You let up 153 yards on the ground, whether that was, Javonte Williams or Russell Wilson running around or whoever. It's just not a very good day for the run defense.
Right.
And, that just has to be better. Everybody has to rally around. Guys are going to get hurt. That's just life of the NFL. But, rallying around. Bolton, he's a big part of that run defense, and definitely was missing him, yesterday. That run defense just needs to be a little better. Step back with the wide receivers and offensive line. It just seems like they've been taking more step back than step forwards this season, which is not a good recipe for any type of win. But they seem to be getting by somehow. And then turnovers, too. I think there's just a little too many turnovers on offense, especially against a pedestrian Broncos team that, you really should be holding on to the ball against and really just dominating against the Broncos. But, it's one of those AFC West, games that, it's just an interdivision game that, it can go any way. But if the Broncos aren't winning the past 8 years, you kind of want to keep that streak alive, but it's hard to do that too. Right, so those are kind of my 3 points.
Yeah, No, Zach, you're good. Go ahead.
I'm glad you brought up turnovers, because that's why I'm not worried. That's why I'm not saying we have to go get the best receiver we can, because I think the only year we finished with a negative point differential is 21, when Mahomes was uncharacteristically just like bad with the football. And we're not going to lose the turnover battle 4 or 5-1 every single game. It's normally going to be like 1-1 or 2-2. So that's why I'm not worried. We gave them great field position and we still held them to 24. They started within our 50 like 3 times.
And 100%. I do need Chiefs fans. I don't want to see you guys in the comment section when this gets posted saying, but you guys are just being negative, this, and the other. No, I need people to understand. The Denver Broncos were 2 scoops of ass on Sunday. The Kansas City Chiefs were bad. The Broncos had a total offense, I think, of 250 yards. It could have been a little bit more than that, but they ran the ball good, correct, to what you guys are saying, but they ran it for 3.5 yards a carry. Almost 3.5 yards a carry. That's not efficient, but guess what? When you have the ball that long, because your offense, like you guys were saying, was turning over the ball, and two, I think, or 3 times they got the ball inside their own 50-yard line. So when you have it where the game was 14-9 majority of the game until the last 5 minutes, where the Chiefs muffed a punt for McCole Hardman, which I'm about to get into. And then you have where obviously Mahomes is 4th and 30. He throws it. It's picked off. They have it. They kick a field goal at the end of the game. So it really was, you can look at it and say, no, Jaden, the Broncos scored 24, but they really scored 14 points. The Broncos scored 14 points, and you had 2 times at the end of the game there was desperation. And guess what? There was a fumble, and the Chiefs got it, the Broncos got it, and they kicked a field goal. But the bright side of this game is the Chiefs' defense has been the best defense going back to probably Tom Mahoney, Derek Johnson, and those guys. You've not had a Chiefs defense that has kept guys, and you can say, well, they haven't played the best teams. They still play teams like the Jags. They still play teams like the Jets who are finding ways to win games. The Chargers have a good offense. I don't care if you don't think they're a good team. They have a good offense, and they're keeping teams below 21 points. The Lions clearly have a good offense, but they're keeping teams below 21 points. They're playing very fundamental defense, and they're a top 5 defensive league. So, and again, feel free to anyone to step in is, where is kind of the silver lining after a game like this?
The silver lining is the turnover differential, the just uncharacteristic, like Mahomes. When does Mahomes get strip sacked? Ever? It happens probably like 3 times a year, and it once happened yesterday. Just uncharacteristic play. Snead getting penalized like 4 times.
Yeah.
So the silver lining is, if we had to take a loss, I would rather it be uncharacteristic than characteristic.
Yeah, and that's it. Again, you're not going to get the Chiefs where they fumbled 3 times. They have 2 interceptions. Like those type of things, I agree, you're not going to have a lot of. And that's when, I really want to ask Dustin, from a outside looking in, you're a Vikings fan. And, the Chiefs did end up playing those Vikings this year. If you had to have, you have to kind of jump these or take these Chiefs fans off the ledge, because they're ready to just jump off the bridge after a game like this from the Broncos. You got to, kind of calm these Chiefs fans down. How do you kind of calm these Chiefs fans down after a game like this going into Miami?
I think you just gotta stay the course, stay with it. Like you guys said, it's a very uncharacteristic game. You're not gonna have many of those. It's just like I said before, it's an AFC West, divisional game.
Right.
Things are gonna happen. Wins are gonna happen by teams that you wouldn't expect to win, aka the Broncos Chiefs game. Where the Broncos dominated time of possession by 7, minutes, 33-26. It's just not a recipe. When you have 5 turnovers from, the Chiefs and only 1 turnover from the Broncos, that it's just, you got to hang on to the ball. You just got to keep drives alive. And I think that's what the Chiefs have been doing most of the year. And I still think that they're going to be, Super Bowl, talks, favorites, whatever you want to say. They're still a really good team. They just got to put it all together. Whether that's bringing in a wide receiver, stepping up with the receiver room. I know I sound like a broken record, but that's what the reality is, and you just got to stay the course.
Yeah, and it may sound simple, it may sound like a broken record, but it really is meat and potatoes right now for the Chiefs. They were betting favorites before the game, and if you look at it after, they're still the betting favorites. So I think obviously the silver lining is Russell Wilson, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think he had 19 passes. He threw the ball 19 times. They had 6 sacks. Chiefs defensive line had 6 sacks. So, and going off of what your point is, what we're going to get into is, trade, if they can bring a receiver in. Zach, I know you talked a little bit about, you don't think they necessarily have to bring in a receiver, but is there someone, maybe a couple names you have in mind if the Chiefs can financially bring in a guy?
I mean, it seems like every guy that ever gets brought up in talks ends up being like DeAndre Hopkins. I was thinking a few days ago, and then the Titans said they're not trading him. I feel like it would need to be a guy of not necessarily Hopkins caliber, because he's still proven he's a very good player. But do other just guys move the needle at all compared to what we have right now? So I don't know. I don't have any particular names in mind. I was thinking Hopkins, but that ship has sailed.
Yeah, and I agree. I don't get why these Chiefs fans, all they have to do is look at our financials. Well, you're not going to be able to afford a guy like Hopkins or a guy like Mike Evans. I mean, a guy maybe like Adam Thielen, I've seen float around. Maybe if they want to say, hey, well, he's not going to be on your team next year, Carolina. There's a shot where he's going to want to go play for another contender because I'm going to be honest. I grew up in I was born in Minnesota. I know a lot of Vikings fans. My brother's a Vikings fan. I don't think when Vikings said, we're going to move on from Adam Thielen, he's a little bit older, he's a little bit of a veteran now, that he was going to go to Carolina and kind of just be like, oh shoot, this guy can still
Old Adam
kind of,
Thielen.
yeah, I can still kind of ball. So do you think a guy like Adam Thielen is possible? What if you were the Chiefs? They said, yes, we're willing to talk to Adam Thielen. What would you give up for a guy like Adam Thielen?
You know why Adam Thielen, like, it sounds great, but then you think about scheme and how we already have an entire team of slot receivers. And it's
Right.
just, he's very similar to now this is disrespectful comparing him to Sky Moore, but he's much better than Sky Moore, obviously. But I don't feel like that's the type of receiver we're really looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I've seen Hollywood Brown. I've seen another couple names. Dustin, if you're Brett Veach, who are you sitting there and you're maybe possibly, calling to see if this can kind of be a trade for the Chiefs out there at the receiver position?
I don't know if there's many trades you can do, especially with the guys that are, the superstars now, whether that's, Jefferson, Chase, you got all the superstars that are already under contract. Those are already out of the picture. You got,
Right.
your vets like Adam Thielen, like you were talking about, DeAndre Hopkins. But a guy that, would be a real possibility is a guy that you guys had last year, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster.
Yeah.
Not doing the greatest in New England, with injuries and just production, stuff like that. But he was really solid on the Chiefs last year, and I think he'd be a good, trade for. Just like with Hardman, just a guy that knows the scheme already and can fit right in, plug and play. Otherwise, I think the Chiefs can look at some free agent guys. Not a great market, but just some guys that have had success at the wide receiver position. Jarvis Landry, I know he's a little older. But Sammy Watkins, he was on the Chiefs before. Not that he was a big superstar, but someone that, has played before with
Possession
Andy
guy.
Reid in that offense.
Yeah. Again, I would love to see a guy like Juju Smith because, like we just talked about, and it kind of has to be something where it's cheaper because right now it's, we don't have a lot of money. They say, they want the trade, but then it has to work out financially. So I think Juju Smith you can get for relatively cheap. Not only just, you can bring his contract over from New England, but it's also, you can only give up maybe a 5th or 6th round pick for him. And I know they just gave up another 6th round pick for McCole Hardman or 7th round pick for McCole Hardman. There is a huge possibility, like Zach saying, that they just kind of ride it out with these guys, and guys are just going to have to step it up. A guy where I would love to see, it's kind of just wishful thinking, is Kyle Pitts. I'd love to see a guy like Kyle Pitts, if they could possibly work out a trade. But I don't know, again, if the Chiefs would be able to give up that type of, draft capital for a guy like Kyle Pitts. And something I wanted to ask you, Dustin, is, talking a little bit of the trade line before we get back a little bit back into the Chiefs, is the Minnesota Vikings. We had some just unfortunate news on Sunday is Kirk Cousins goes down with an injury in Green Bay. And now it's kind of just, do we kind of sell or do we kind of, buy into the trade line? Are we selling or are we buying, at the trade line? What are the Vikings? What are you hearing from the Vikings right now at this trade deadline coming up at 3:00 tomorrow on Halloween?
So me personally, I don't think that they do trade for anybody, just because of how the season is shaken out. Are you still trying to salvage, the season? I don't think any of the guys that you would trade for, whether that's Kyler Murray, Matthew Stafford, Andy Dalton, Ryan Tannehill, any of those guys, I don't think that they're going to get you back on track to a 9-8 season or anything like that, kind of sneak into the playoffs. But, like those guys that I have said, if the Vikings were to look at somebody, it'd be, a wildly vet, like one of those guys. Otherwise, you're kind of looking at free agents. Carson Wentz, Joe Flacco, Nick Foles. Those guys are still available. I know some guys or there some Vikings fans were talking about Tom Brady, but obviously that's a huge pipe
Right.
dream. He's 46 years old. I don't know how much better he would be than any of the other guys I previously mentioned, but yeah, it's a tough scenario. Kirk was playing extremely well. I think he's a top 7 quarterback this year in production wise. Crawling out of a 2-4 start, 0-3 start. Now back to finally 500, getting a win in Green Bay over the 49ers at home. Just kind of getting back on track, and now it's just kind of a whirlwind of, what do you do? Do you trade for a quarterback when you had plans for trading for, other positions, maybe like a corner or defensive lineman, but now it's mostly quarterback that you're kind of focusing on and just kind of see where all that goes.
Yeah, and like you said, you don't really think that the Vikings are going to go after a quarterback. Do you think it's a possibility they are, by any means? I don't know if this, in my opinion, I don't think they are. But do you think they're saying, you know what, the guy like Daniil Hunter, we can maybe get a first round pick for him, or maybe a guy like KJ Osborne, we can get some picks, or whoever it may be. Do you think the Minnesota Vikings are in sell mode right now?
I don't know if they're necessarily sell mode now. I think if they would have lost, to the 49ers, the Packers, be at a 2-5, 3-6 season right now, I think they would definitely be in sell mode. But now with the defense playing, kind of lighting up a little bit, playing a little bit better. If they were to trade Daniil, I know there's talks about the Vikings wanting at least a first round pick for him. And I think if something is substantial, I think you have to take that. If you're the Vikings, you get a first round pick, depending on the team and the draft position that you're getting, I think that would be a great trade. But other than that, I don't think that they're buyers either, really. It's a, like I said before, it's a tough position for the Vikings. You can't really be in all sell mode and you can't really be in buy mode right now.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think again, you have some key weapons on offense where you can still get it going. Real quick before we move on, and got some trade deadline questions for Zach. Is convince these Vikings fans. Give me a little pep talk on why you think that the Vikings could potentially still sneak into the playoffs with a guy like Jaren Hall. Why should people still believe? Why should Vikings fans still believe when Kirk Cousins goes down, they can make it into the playoffs?
I think there's a lot of mystery with Jaren Hall. We obviously don't know what he is. We saw a little bit of him in preseason and really hasn't blown anybody away. It's just one of those things that you have to put him out in a game to see what he's like. And, versus Green Bay, he had one completion for like 23 yards or something like that. And, not something eye-opening, but, going against the Falcons team on the road, I think it's a good challenge for him. I won't say it's a tough one, but it's a good challenge for him. Full week of preparation, just kind of playing with the offense. And Jefferson comes back in a week. We'll see if he wants to come back, if that,
Right.
especially with Kirk gone. But yeah, I think the team definitely is rallying around Jaren Hall, and if they do make a move or don't make a move, I think they'll rally around the QB1 for the next coming weeks.
Yeah, and I like Jaren Hall again. Like I said, they got Osborne, you got Addison, you got some playmakers. That Justin Jefferson comes back. Moving back over, Zach, what are some of the non-cheat, just the other teams in the NFL you could see maybe trying to make a splash, not necessarily for a certain guy, but a certain position you think, these team needs another piece to become another contender. If that's Jacksonville getting a pass rusher, or if that's, Cincinnati getting, more offensive line help, more cornerback help. But is there another team out there you think, this team needs to just go get this piece to become an even better contender or put themselves in the playoffs with that move?
I mean, what I was thinking before they made the move, especially for Byard, was Philadelphia needed secondary help because
Right.
everyone in their secondary was dropping like flies. Maddox, And then early in the season, also Slay was facing injuries. And they addressed that at least partially by getting Kevin Byard. They really, as we saw, their secondary still needs a lot of help with Sam Howell throwing for almost like how much, like 400 against them.
Yeah.
So probably Philadelphia, adding another corner. I know they have a solid duo, but they lack depth. They also lack good pass coverage at the linebacker position. So Philadelphia adding just because their defensive line and their offense is so great that if they could go, obviously they're all in every year with Jalen Hurts and with that offensive line. But really, if they could tap in and get another secondary piece or linebacker piece in the market, that would be huge for Philadelphia. Otherwise, looking at the AFC, the Ravens could add a running back, a better running, because they have such a great rush attack, even with these mediocre running backs like Gus Edwards, Justice Hill. They're just guys, and they still get production. And with Lamar looking like he looks, and with the defense looking like they look, and with Harbaugh and just Harbaugh's history of having these elite run games since Lamar Jackson has got there, I'm thinking Henry's looking off the table, but there's talented running backs all over the league that are getting underutilized.
Yeah, so I mean, both of those are great. I mean, the Ravens, if they really want to be that, and I really do think, and this is going to be perfectly led into our next segue, is I do think the Ravens, and a lot of people are talking about the just Dolphins, Chiefs, is you have the Chiefs who are the first seed, you have the Dolphins who are obviously the second seed, and of course you have the Bengals, but I mean, again, right now it's the season end today. The Bengals would still be 2 spots away from making the playoffs because you have a team like the Browns who are still winning, a team like the Ravens, a team like the Steelers that are still winning games. So it's still going to be tough for the Bengals to still keep trying to climb back from the hole they digged. But again, I do think the Ravens, I mean, if they can find a way to somehow the Titans, you had Will Levis who played well. But if they can say, hey, we'll send you a second rounder or a first rounder for Derek Henry, or even a Zach Moss who's playing well, or one of these guys, I know that the Giants said Saquon Barkley's off the table. If they can find a way to just get another back in there that is not going to get hurt after 2 weeks, because I feel like every year they have a running back that comes in for the Ravens, all of a sudden he gets hurt. But I really do think the Ravens and the Chiefs, and then I think it is the Dolphins, and that's what, and feel free, anyone jump in here, can tell me why the Chiefs versus this Dolphins game right here in Germany is the 2 best teams in the AFC, or convince me why it's not the 2 best teams in the AFC.
My 2 best teams are the Chiefs and the Ravens. I have the Bengals after that because they look more informed than they have, especially beating a tough 49ers team. Chiefs, I mean, it's self-explanatory. Mahomes and Reed together has not proven they should never not be the favorites, at least in the AFC.
Yeah. No, continue. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, you're good. And Baltimore, they look more similar to those early Baltimore teams with Lamar Jackson, like that team that went 14-2 with the elite defense, along with Lamar playing great. So they're definitely dangerous. But when it comes to who's the number 1 favorite, I feel like it's got to be Kansas City. Now, obviously, that's extremely biased, but I think it's granted since we continue to win.
And that's the thing. Kansas City, after the loss, they're still the 1 seed. And Dustin, I had a question for you. Obviously, you're an NFC guy, but you still watch the AFC. What is it? Why? And we've talked about this a lot, just over phone or on TikTok Live. Is why do you think the Miami Dolphins, and I like to call them the bullies, because for some reason they can dominate versus the Broncos and the Patriots, but why are they just having problems? Competing in games versus teams like the Bills, versus teams, like the Eagles. We saw where, again, it wasn't like it was, it was a 3-point game or 7-point game, or, they were kind of into the game and became 10 points. But Dustin, why are the Dolphins just at times having trouble when the team is so good at times having trouble versus teams that can just compete above 500 teams?
To me, I think it's, schematics. I mean, you have great players all across the board. Jalen Ramsey just came back. You have Jalen Waddle. You have Tyreek Hill on offense. Good running back core too. MVP caliber quarterback, especially earlier in the season. But as far as why they're struggling against really good teams, that it's beyond me. I really don't know. They seem to really beat up on the really bad teams, and then when it comes to the really good teams of the NFL, they just go toe to toe. They just find ways to lose, and I don't know what it is. It's something with schematics, I'm thinking, because you can't have a talented roster and be losing all those games.
Yeah, and I really do. And if you're Kansas City, bringing it into one of our last topics for the night before we get out of here, is I want to get both of your guys' quick thoughts. And obviously, we will preview more of the Dolphins game later in the week. But, Zach, how do you beat a team? How do you just slow down a team like Miami when they have the fastest team in the league? They're the most finesse team in the league. How do you go into Germany and you just slow down a guy like Tyreek Hill and a guy like Jalen Waddle and just the speed, just demons of the Miami Dolphins?
You're not going to slow down Tyreek. You're not going to slow down Waddle. You're not going to slow down Mostert. You're not going to slow down Achane. But you can slow down the guy that gets them the ball. And that's
Right.
what it seems to happen when they lose. It's because if the Dolphins are playing a team that has him toe-to-toe, Tua is a great quarterback, okay, don't get me wrong. But
Right.
when he goes toe-to-toe with teams like the Eagles, teams like the Bills, he does not perform as he does. He doesn't get Tyreek the balls efficiently. And Tyreek, when he does get the ball, he's going to make something good out of it. But
Right.
teams that prove that they're on caliber, on par with the Dolphins, their offense is not historic. Their offense is elite still, but it's not the same offense. And we have the defense, and other teams, the Ravens have the defense to do that. The Bills have the scheme. They might not have the personnel anymore with all these injuries, but
Right.
they've shown that McDermott's scheme can slow down Tua.
Before I really get Dustin's kind of thoughts on it is I 100% agree is everything you just said. You're not going to slow down a guy like Tyreek Hill. When he gets the ball, he's going to go. And a lot of people are coming up to me saying, do you really think Snead and whoever is going to stop Tyreek Hill? No. He's not. He's going to probably score a touchdown. He's probably going to go for 110. Do I think he's going to go for 200 yards on a career day? No, because they're obviously going to be one. Snead and those guys have been on the Chiefs for a couple of years, and they've clearly heard what Tyreek Hill has said about them. How they didn't really win the Super Bowl. It was kind of the refs handed to them. We all know that. They're going to come in very focused for this Dolphins game. But no, you're not going to stop Waddle. You're not going to stop. The guy you have to stop, and it may sound just cut dry meat and potatoes, is Tua. And like we just mentioned, Russell Wilson is a guy who dropped back 19 times, threw the ball 19 times. They sacked him 6 times. A guy like Tua, again, no disrespect, he's a guy who's had some concussions in his career. He flows like a launcher. He's a guy that does not like to get hit. I'm not calling him soft. I'm not calling him anything else. But he's a guy, again, he's not the most mobile guy. Yeah, he can make plays with his feet. But again, he's a guy who just wants to get the ball up quick, get the ball in his playmaker's hands. So I 100% agree with you. If they can just slow down the guy who's getting them the ball, they don't have to sit there and have 6 sacks. But if they can find a way to hurry him, he's not a guy where, again, he's going to be able to get the ball, boom, boom, on time. He's an on-time, timing type quarterback. He's kind of like an Alex Smith, where he likes to be in rhythm, get that ball up quick, and just get the ball in his playmakers. Again, when we saw Tyreek Hill early on with the Chiefs, when he had just a guy wasn't going to just drop back 30 times and make plays like Patrick Mahomes, a guy who just boom, boom, boom on rhythm. So I think if they can disrupt his rhythm, I think, again, that is a fair point. You have to kind of slow down the guy who's handling the ball. Dustin, is there any other thoughts you want to add on how you kind of just slow down a little bit of the Miami Dolphins offense?
Kind of alluding to what I said earlier, with schematics. I think Steve Spagnuolo knows Tyreek Hill pretty well. You're not going to stop a guy like him, but he knows him pretty well. He's going to have a game plan ready. Tyreek Hill is just a different wide receiver. He's not just a route runner. He's not just a speedster. You use him all over on the field on offense. Sweeps, just anything, handoffs. Just everything on offense that you can think of. So trying to slow him down is going to be tough, but like I said, Spagnuolo is going to have a game plan ready for him, and same with Waddle, same with Tua. You got to get in Tua's head early. Make him throw, confuse Tua a little bit, pre-snap, after snap, get a couple takeaways, and I think that's how you'll beat the Dolphins most likely.
Yeah, and we'll see. We may not see you again, Dustin, before the Dolphins play the Chiefs in Germany. Can you kind of give us a final score and just a final game prediction? I know you kind of alluded, what are some of the obviously takeaways, but just a final score and just kind of just some comfort for your friends just a little bit down in Missouri.
I think that it will be a relatively high scoring game.
Right.
I think it will be definitely a 27-30 type game. I think the Chiefs will end up beating the Dolphins. I don't know if the Dolphins have everything that it takes to beat the Chiefs. I think Mahomes is definitely going to bounce back. Playing in the cold, in Denver, against a team that you should have beat. I think they'll definitely bounce back, and I think they'll get off to a hot start early against the Dolphins. If not, they're definitely gonna be toe to toe.
Yeah, I love the prediction. You said a 30-27. Is that the final prediction?
Yeah, 30-27.
30-27 Chiefs. I love to hear that. Before we get out of here, our last segment, something I wanted to ask you guys is right now, as we're kind of at the midway point of the season, can you guys give me your awards? Before we get out of here, I just want to know your guys' mid-season awards. Since Zach, it is your first time on the show. Can you give me your mid-season awards? I know it's a little tricky because it really no one is kind of leading in each category, but can you give me your mid-season awards? MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, your rookie awards, and then your most improved player or your comeback player of the year.
Yep. My MVP is Tyreek.
Tyreek, okay.
Because I'm not going by the quarterback, because if you take the Dolphins, he is more valuable than Tua. If you put a replacement player for Tua and a replacement player for Tyreek, the difference is crazy. That's compared to if you were to do that with Mahomes and Kelsey, even though Kelsey is the greatest of all time in his position, in my opinion, it would still favor we need Mahomes more than we need Kelsey. But it's not the case with Tyreek. And so Tyreek is my MVP, best offense in the league, on pace for over 2,000. So that's my MVP. DPOY would be Myles Garrett.
Okay.
He doesn't. I don't know if he leads. He does not lead in sacks. I'm pretty sure Danielle Hunter leads in sacks, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But Garrett is just a game record. He's won 2 games by himself, which if a defensive player is doing that, then he deserves his flowers for that. So he'll be my DPOY. OPOY, I'll choose someone different since I chose Tyreek. I'll give McCaffrey that one. Christian McCaffrey, OPOY. Yeah. And then comeback player, I have no clue who's come back from injury. Who missed last year?
So just to name a few, you have DeMar Hamlin. Maybe Dustin? Is there any players I'm forgetting? Comeback player of the year.
I'll give it to Chet
to be honest, I'm really drawing a blank too. It's really tough this year.
I can't think. I mean, honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. I can't think of any quarterbacks or running back. I mean, you have JT, Jonathan Taylor, but he's not doing much.
People are probably screaming at us in the comments like, hey, how do you not say this player?
Well, I know. Yeah, again, this is a perfect segment. If you guys have a suggestion for comeback player of the year, leave a comment below. So if you guys have a suggestion, I'd love to hear your guys' suggestion. But who is your rookies, Zach? Who do you have as your rookies?
Ooh, that's a good question. Offensive rookie? I mean, I would have said Stroud until the last couple weeks. Stroud is not. I guess he had a bye 2 weeks ago, but this week he did not play near as well. But he's playing quarterback. I'm gonna give it to Stroud for sure. He's been a good quarterback.
Stroud is I think a good pick. Who do you think is right now? There's a lot of good defensive players. Who do you think is a defensive rookie of the year?
Who is a defensive rookie? Jalen Carter. PFF has him as the highest graded interior D-line. Before his injuries doing good. I mean, Weatherspoon as well is doing good, but I like Jalen Carter. Yeah.
Dustin, shooting it over to you. Dustin, if it may be the same, I mean, because again, he had some great picks, but who are some guys you like leading in some of these categories where you said, you know what, if I had to put my money down, I got this guy winning MVP, Offensive Player of the Year. Who do you got?
For MVP, I think there's still a lot of football left to really decide because, like you said, there's nobody really leading the race right now. People can still go with Mahomes. I know he's kind of not having a step back this season, but is struggling with his offensive weapons.
Right.
You got the obvious Tyreek Hill. Just a couple other guys too, especially on the defensive side of the ball. They'll never give the defensive guy MVP,
Right, yeah.
especially in a passing league. But
Right.
I think you just have a couple guys there. Offensive player of the year, probably Tyreek Hill if he won't win MVP.
Okay.
Defensive player of the year, probably Myles Garrett or TJ Watt, like Zach said earlier. Rookie of the year, CJ Stroud, if he keeps it up, the rest of the year. Otherwise, Jordan Addison, the Vikings wide receiver rookie. I think he's tied or leads the league in touchdown receptions. Yep. He has 7. So that's a great thing, for a rookie as a number 2 wide receiver on the team. Currently a wide receiver 1 because Justin's out. But yeah, just a phenomenal season. That's, I feel like, kind of going under the radar a little bit. But and then comeback player of the year, like we said, we don't know yet.
Yeah, and like I said, I would love to see people in the comment section. I love those picks. People may be saying, "Oh, Dustin, they've kind of put some red and gold on you with the Patrick Mahomes pick." But if you look at it right now, I mean, the Chiefs have the number 1 record in the AFC. Obviously you could give it to a guy like Hurts who has the number 1 record in the NFC. But I mean, I love those picks. I don't think they're bad picks at all. I love every single one of those, especially when you mentioned TJ Watt. TJ Watt is absolutely bowling out. Our last thing before we get out of here is the shout out. Anything you guys want to shout out, if there's somewhere they can keep up with your sports takes, or if it's your IG, it's your Twitter, wherever you want to shout out. It's just the shout out of the week. Zach, we'll start with you. Where can people kind of keep up with you on social media?
You can just follow me on IG. I don't have anything else. I don't even know what my handle is. So you can go first, Dustin. Give me a second.
Dustin, as he tries to find his social media, tell people where he can keep up with him. Dustin, where can people find the number 1 Vikings fan on TikTok?
Number 1 Vikings fan on TikTok is That Vikings Fan. You can search that on TikTok and you'll find me pretty easy. A lot of Vikings content. I go to a lot of games. Just capture the fan experience practically and talk about, Viking scenarios, in between games. So if you guys are a Vikings fan or just want a Vikings fan's perspective on a lot of things, a realistic fan, be sure to follow me there.
Yeah, let me make myself very clear on this podcast. If you're an NFL fan, and then this is especially if you're a Vikings fan, even if you're a Green Bay fan, and you don't go check out That Vikings Fan on TikTok, your mother will disown you, your father won't love you anymore, and you will never have any love. Yeah, like you just won't. So you got to go find That Vikings Fan on TikTok and go check out his content. He has great content.
I got to do that right now.
All seriousness, guys. And Zach, you got your app, man. People want to know they can keep
up. It's Zach.story. That's it. ZACH.STORY. And I'm following, what is it, That Vikings Fan?
Yeah, That Vikings Fan. Go check out That Vikings Fan.
I got you.
I promise you, he's not going to be like Will. He's not going to be like Will Levis. He doesn't do anything weird. He's not going to be having mayonnaise in his coffee and drinking or anything like that.
You got 17K? You got 17K? Okay.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, guys. You got to go check out That Vikings Fan. He will be on here most of part of the season. We love having him on here just from NFL perspective and his Vikings perspective. We know we have a lot of Vikings fans out here. But, guys, make sure you guys go check out all their social media. We will be back on the TPT podcast later this week for more of a preview for the Miami Dolphins game. We will see you guys next time on the TPT podcast.